Hi, Sandman here again. Today I'm looking at True Believers 1, Thanos The First, which is a reprint of Iron Man 55 and Logan's run of all things, number 6. There's a backup story in the back that's from Logan's run, number 6. Really, True Believers is a reprint book. I generally don't have time for reprint books. I just don't really see the point of them. But that being said, I saw other people reviewed some of these True Believers. And one thing I liked is seeing the old comics with fresh, new, vibrant colors and on better paper. So I actually kind of fallen in love with True Believers now. When I pick up every single one, you're going to see a lot of reviews from the True Believers series, just because they just seem better, more photogenic to review than the actual real comics. If I find one that I actually have to, I might do a compare and contrast in the future. This book was released around the time Avengers Infinity War came out, and I could see why they released it, because it really links up well, because being the first appearance of Thanos, and also the first appearance of Drax. And by some weird chance that happened in Iron Man 55, which is a character that's not usually associated with Thanos that much. But the movie features all three pretty prominently, so that's kind of serendipitous. One thing you notice right away is the nice art. It's plot pencils and character conceptions by Jim Starlin, one of the main guys, or the main person associated with Thanos. You'll see Mike Friedrich. He did a lot of the early Thanos stories too. I'm not quite sure what their relationship is or how that split was made, but yeah. So that's about all I could say about that. And then we got the classic inker Mike Esposito, John Costanza, letterer and editor Roy Thomas. And so this came out originally in 1968. So that wasn't too long after Roy Thomas took over from Stan Lee, I believe. It's also a time where I don't want to say quality suffered, but the books weren't as great as when Stan was doing them. After Stan had kind of left the day-to-day duties, quality kind of suffered a bit until Jim Shooter took over. It was gradual until it got pretty bad in the 70s, and then when Jim Shooter took over, he helped out a lot and made things better. But moving on, so we see Iron Man fighting the Blood Brothers. I haven't heard of these guys ever coming back. They probably have. Some writers are pretty good at bringing back obscure characters. He's taken down pretty easily. One thing I noticed is early Iron Man comics, Iron Man's really all about slugfest. He doesn't seem to use any of his weapons. So yeah, he's taken off to another planet. And right here, Drax explains. Yeah, this is not the part yet. Yeah, Thanos is talking. It's the first time we see him. They're talking about their relationship. And then for some reason Drax sends a telepathic message, a power which I really don't think is associated with him anymore. Probably only this one time, and he contacts Tony Stark of all people for some reason. And then back in the old days, Iron Man used to carry his armor in a briefcase. Basically folded like real clothes until he polarized it to make it stiff. And used magnets to pull up the sleeves of the legs and the legs and the arms and the leg pant legs. There it is, the classic armor. It's looking a little rough here. This is Jim Starlin's early work. His pencils weren't quite as refined as they will be later on. Starlin's mostly known for his writing, but his art's pretty good. I'd put him up there with the greats. So here we're getting the history of Thanos. It's pretty much the way it always goes. So for his mentor, his father, and Star Fox's brother are colored purple here. And Star Fox has different color hair. Star Fox would later, Arrows, as he's labeled in this comic, would later become an Avenger down the road in the 80s during an awesome Roger Stern run. And he was like white skinned, or no, well, white man skinned, peach, and red hair. And I can't remember what color Mentor is. Pretty sure he's white man skin too, and can't remember the hair. Pretty sure it's not white. Could be. Yeah, so that's something that got changed. This is probably the only appearance with them looking like that. You gotta love these 70s aliens, or 60s actually, late 60s. Pretty decent though still, like the ships look, usually like in comic books, when they do outer space stuff, the ships are always kind of like really dumb looking. These aren't too bad. And here we get to the origin of Drax, which is different from what it gets changed later on. In fact, if you see when we get to the second story in this book, you'll see the updated origin. And he's just created to fight Thanos. There's no mention of his family being killed, like he's originally an Earthman. And his family got killed by Thanos, and that's why he has such a hard-on to kill him. So here we go, we see Drax and Thanos going at it. You notice there's a very lack of Iron Man in this book. I can't remember if Starlin actually had a run on Iron Man, or is this just a fill-in issue? Back then, Marvel wouldn't delay a comic if it was late. They would have something they called inventory issues or fill-in issues, which they had pre-done, ready to insert into a run, so they wouldn't have to miss a month. So a lot of times these stories were like really like unconsequential stories to the main storyline that was going through the series. Just kind of a one and done comic. And every once in a while, the writers would use this as a reason to introduce new concepts or stories or characters they were interested in. And or sometimes if a writer had been on a book that had got canceled before he finished the story, he would conclude the story in one of these fill-ins. So that's how you get weird stuff like this. But oh yeah, there we go. He finally uses a repulsor blast. That helmet looks goofy here. This is the classic armor, but it's, no offense to Starlin, it's not drawn really well here. Like when I think Iron Man, I think of this outfit. Armor. So right away we see how badass Thanos is. He's actually steps on Iron Man's hand and actually breaks pieces off his hand. His gauntlet. Here's the full reveal. You can see pieces still falling off his gauntlet. Though I don't know what's falling off, because if you look at the other gauntlet, it looks exactly the same. So we get some plot convenience. Mentor fires this Project Freedom. Send it to Iron Man. It somehow interfaces with his armor and lets him fire this massive beam where Iron Man goes, "Holy Toledo!" Actually, that's something I forgot to mention throughout this whole comic. Iron Man has some weird dialogue. He talks in such a weird way. Just can't see him, Tony Stark, talking this way. So I think I'm gonna stop here. I don't want to spoil you guys on a 40-year-old story. This might be the first time you guys have been reading it, so I'm gonna skip ahead to the second story. The Final Flower, written by Scott Edelman. Not a well-known writer, but he did a lot of stuff in Marvel back in the day. And Mike Zeck, incredible artist. He really hit his stride in the 80s. He's if you notice, like if you go back to these old comics, you'll see like a lot of big name artists got started doing these small backup stories or fill-in stories. It's kind of in contrast to today, when Marvel seems to hire Tumblr writers and gives them a like a number 1 issue and launches them, gives them a huge push without building any cred or paying their dues. Really sad state for the industry right now. But getting back to this is the story appeared at the end of Logan's run 6. Apparently just thrown in there because Logan's run 6, they had some deadline issues, and they're still hammering out some contract issues to continue the comic after the adaptation of the movie. So they could only do 12 pages, and they commissioned, or more likely had the story already ready to go and put it at the back. It doesn't really relate to Logan's run at all, but it's a simple story that's pretty good. It's about Thanos showing up to some kind of religious place where they're worshipping the last flower. And of course he wants to crush it. Drax shows up. They fight. And there's a subplot of this lady and her son, or daughter, I think it's a daughter, going up, and she's outraged that he's going to destroy this flower. Like even back in, I'm not sure when this came out. This must have been 70s, this comic. Yeah, Logan's Run, it would have came around the same time as the movie. Probably, I think it's 76. Could be wrong on that. But, you can see Thanos just chucks these guys off the edge. Even with the little bounce there, boing. I'm pointing it on my camera here. You can't see my finger, but right there, boing. Yeah, that's pretty harsh for the time. Like, it shows how bad, nasty Thanos is even back then. And then this is where I was talking about earlier. Drax remembers his origin here, and he was a man. His family was killed by Thanos. Not sure why, he just showed up to the planet to kill him. It's funny, like Drax is named Art Sampson. I would later be changed to Art Douglas, because they would establish Drax had a daughter, Moondragon, who's ended up being a character in Avengers and Defenders. and what's that comic? It was that pre-Guardians of the Galaxy around Armageddon or Annihilation Wave. But anyways, yeah, you guys are probably wondering, like, Drax is pretty different in this. This is how he was originally, like, prior to this miniseries that launched, one of the few miniseries that launched just before the Annihilation Wave series back in early 2000s. And that's when they kind of redid him as what you know him now as. You see him now with the tattoos and the knives. Visually, it's probably improvement, character-wise. I'm not so sure. but yeah, so Thanos actually destroys the flower, and Drax he gets away, and these guys are actually mad at Drax for letting him destroy the flower, but he's like, I could not, or then I'd been as evil as Thanos. That's a good little story. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. Yeah, it's a good little 7-page story that would teach morals to the young minds reading the book at the time. And here's the original cover. It's pretty much the same, but it's actually Iron Man 55. I love old school Marvel trade dress with the Marvel Comics group at the top, price, number, and a little image of the star of the book. They would modify this over the years to, like, they would get rid of this Iron Man, move down the banner to match up with the price and number, and then this would be a whole box, rectangle box, which would feature the art of the main character or characters. I just love that, the way they did that. It's like, where all the information is consistently. Now it's just like all over the place. You can't even find the numbers, like, even if the numbers mean anything in these books. But that's neither here nor there. And by coincidence, I actually have this on my Kindle Unlimited right now, and I started reading this 2 nights ago. And coincidentally, it has the same story we just read in here, the Iron Man 55. I haven't gone that far. I'm not sure if the Logan's Run story is in there, but apparently this has all the Thanos appearances leading up to when he came back in Silver Surfer. 50 something, or 37, 36, whatever it was. I have the True Believers of that too, so we'll get to that. And this is a handy guide too. This shows you all the appearances. If you want to get caught up on Thanos, this pretty much gives you everything you need to know. It's not everything, but it's pretty damn close, and that's enough. So yeah, I've liked this a lot more than I thought I would. It's really impressed with this series. Actually, it's a good way to get nostalgic and reread old comics and not have to deal with how your old comics have deteriorated and yellowed and the colors have washed out. It's nice to see the better printing process. Yeah, I'm a fan, and you can't go wrong with the price. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Focus. There we go. $1 US. Can't go wrong with that price. Even though when this first came out, this was like 20 cents. But, right at this day and age, $1's a steal. And that's great. Focus. Yeah, pick it up if you can still find it. I'm not sure if these are like normal comics where you just They print them and that's it, unless they get a second printing. I think these are available all the time. They just you have to ask them to order, or your comic shop to order. But anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, click the bell icon to get notified. And thanks so much. Bye.